Section 5, the Mexican-American War. You might think that Texas and Oregon were sufficient new territory for any president, but it wasn't for Polk. This humorless, hardworking president had one great goal of expanding the United States as far as possible. Polk's gaze fell next on the huge areas known as California and New Mexico. He was determined to have them both, by purchase if possible, by force if necessary. These areas were first colonized by Spain. They became Mexican territories when Mexico won its independence in 1821. Both were thinly settled and long neglected by the Mexican government, so Polk hoped that they might be for sale. He sent a representative to Mexico to try and buy the territories. However, Mexican officials refused even to see Polk's representative. War breaks out in Texas. When Congress voted to annex Texas, relations between the United States and Mexico turned sour. Mexico considered the annexation of Texas an act of war. To make matters worse, Texas and Mexico could not agree on a border. Texas claimed the Rio Grande as its border on the south and the west. Mexico wanted the border to be the Nueces River, about 150 miles northeast of the Rio Grande. On April 25, 1846, Mexican soldiers fired on U.S. troops who were patrolling along the Rio Grande. 16 Americans were killed or wounded. This was just the excuse for war that Polk had been waiting for. He said that Mexico has invaded our territory and shed American blood upon American soil. 2 days after Polk's speech, Congress declared war on Mexico. This started the Mexican-American War. Okay, so if you look right here, we are reading about the boundary and why there is a war. And if you look at question 2, it says label the map with sentences to explain why U.S. Congress declared war. So this is pointing to the disputed area. Why is it disputed? And you will type that answer in there, and you'll be looking out over in this section here. So right here, this purple section. Sorry. And then you've got, what did Mexico want? What did the U.S. want or think about that disputed territory? And what about the people that already lived in Texas at the time? Because that's what Texas looked like at the time right there. Okay, so now that you have filled in your answers for number 2, we are going to keep reading and finish up section 5. The fall of New Mexico and California. A few months later, General Stephen Kearny led the Army of the West out of Kansas. He had orders to occupy New Mexico and then continue west to California. Mexican opposition melted away in front of Kearny's army. The Americans took control of New Mexico without firing a shot. General Kearny, a pleased Polk wrote in his diary, has thus far performed his duty well. Meanwhile, a group of Americans launched a rebellion against Mexican rule in California. The explorer John C. Fremont had heard about the uprising, so he gave his support to the Americans. The Americans arrested and jailed General Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo, the Mexican commander of Northern California. Then they raised a flag showing a grizzly bear sketched in blackberry juice. They declared California the Bear Flag Republic. When Kearny reached California, he joined forces with the rebels. Within weeks, all of California was under U.S. control. The United States invades Mexico. The conquest of Mexico itself was far more difficult. U.S. troops under General Zachary Taylor battled their way south from Texas. Taylor was a no-nonsense general. He was known fondly as Old Rough and Ready because his backwoods clothes. After 6,000 U.S. troops took the Mexican city of Monterrey, General Santa Anna stopped them and he marched north to meet Taylor with an army of 20,000 Mexican troops. In February of 1847, the two forces met near a ranch called Buena Vista. Santa Anna said both armies have been cut to pieces after 2 days of fighting. Santa Anna retreated south rather than lose the rest of his army. This ended the war in northern Mexico. U.S. forces led by General Winfield Scott landed at Veracruz in southern Mexico a month later. Scott was a stickler for discipline and loved fancy uniforms, so he was given the nickname Old Fuss and Feathers. His troops fought their way to Mexico's capital, Mexico City, for the next 6 months. The Americans met fierce resistance at the castle of Chapultepec. About 1,000 Mexican soldiers and 100 young military cadets fought bravely to defend the fortress. 6 of the cadets chose to die fighting rather than surrender. To this day, the boys who died that day are honored in Mexico as Niños Héroes, or the boy heroes. Despite such resistance, Scott's army captured Mexico City in September of 1847. Watching from a distance, a Mexican officer muttered darkly, "God is a Yankee." Okay, so above this picture, all the way to where I had started reading, that is where you will answer question 3. Question 3, choose 2 of these Mexican-American War battle locations. So there were 4 places that they gave you. And of those 2, you will write the first one here, and then you'll write the second one here of the locations. The 4 that you can choose from are right here. And then it says write the first headline in this top box for a U.S. newspaper whose editors would have agreed with Manifest Destiny. And in the box below it, write a headline you think would have shown up in Mexico after that battle or during that battle. And do the same for both of the 2 locations you pick. So go ahead and pause and do that now. Okay, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. In early 1848, Mexico and the United States signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Mexico agreed to give up Texas and a vast region known as the Mexican Cession. A cession is something that is given up. This area included present-day states of California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, as well as parts of Colorado and Wyoming. Under this agreement, Mexico gave up half of all its territory. In return, the United States agreed to pay Mexico $15 million. It also promised to protect the 80,000 to 100,000 Mexicans living in Texas and the Mexican Cession. Most of these promises were not kept. In Washington, a few senators opposed the treaty. Some argued that the United States had no right to any Mexican territory other than Texas. They believed the Mexican-American War had been unjust and the treaty was too. They said New Mexico and California together were not worth a dollar. They thought Mexico and California should be returned to Mexico. Other senators opposed the treaty because they wanted even more land. They believed the Mexican Cession should include a large part of northern Mexico as well. To most senators, the Mexican Cession was a manifest destiny dream come true. The Senate ratified the treaty by a vote of 38 to 14. And now you can answer question 4. Question 5, and the last part, the Gadsden Purchase. A few years later, the United States acquired more land from Mexico. In 1835, James Gadsden arranged the purchase of a strip of land just south of the Mexican Cession for $10 million. Railroad builders wanted this land. It was flat and could serve as a good railroad route. This land, known as the Gadsden Purchase, created the present-day border of the southwestern United States with Mexico. Most Americans were pleased with the new outlines of their country, but not everyone rejoiced in this expansion. Until the Mexican-American War, many people had believed the United States was too good a nation to bully or invade its weaker neighbors. Now they knew that such behavior was the dark side of manifest destiny. And then you should be able to answer question 5 here. Okay, so in looking at this assignment, once you have completed the section 4 and section 5 parts of the handout or interactive notebook, you will then go to the processing section of this notebook. So on this section, you will see a sketch, the same sketch we looked at before when we annotated the painting American Progress. This time you'll do a couple different things. You will not write on the painting again or on the picture, but instead you will annotate it by drawing or by first selecting 4 items from the painting. So you could get out your notes or look at your older assignment as to what all of these things mean. It would be exceedingly helpful. And then you would just basically, let's say you choose the buffalo over here, you probably would have to pretend you're a buffalo and write it in the first person about how you feel as that animal given what's going on with manifest destiny. When we did this picture the first time, what you did was to see what each symbol meant. Now what I would like for you to do is to turn it into a statement in first person to show what the different groups felt about it as American Progress expanded west. So I've done one for you, and it is the steamship here. You have 2 options. You can write object and then whatever it is, and then you can write down what the people on that ship might be saying. And so I've got, we are so glad that Erie Canal was built. Now our ability to trade is better. And I tried to make it look like a little thought bubble, so you can do it that way. You could add 4 thought bubbles that way. The other thing that you could do here is you could select your items and you could insert a text box with numbers. So let's say you wanted to choose her. You would just put a 1 beside that. And I would think you might need to put that in some kind of different color. So if that's what you chose, you would write that, and you would then be able to just come back up here and add a text box and just write 1 and then the name of it. And then write out what that object is saying or thinking. Oops. And this needs to be like 1 to 2 sentences, okay? But it's very important that you go through and you use the evidence and you use the work that we did previously so that you can make sure what you're writing isn't just something off the cuff like, I'm heading west, because that won't get you any credit, okay? All right, once this is finished and you've got all of the items done on this assignment, which you have been given 2.5 days to complete, then you are finished and can upload your copy and turn it in.